Welcome to the Independence Cable television show, Clarkston Memories. Our show looks at the rich history of the Clarkston area and the Independence Township area too. Our guests today show have been active members of our community for over 80 years, and we hope their memories will help us all remember our heritage. You're going to get a little glimpse of what it was like to be a child in Clarkston in the 1940s and 50s. And we're today introduce our guests are Rick Huttenlocker and Tom Bullen. Rick on the right and Tom on the left. They're two distinguished gentlemen, have been friends since they met in kindergarten in 1940. And you'll see a picture of their kindergarten class. And thank you, Tom and Rick, for sharing your memories with the residents of Clarkston. Rick and Tom, can you tell the viewers a little bit about how your families came to Clarkston? We'll start with you, Rick, and how your family, when they came to Clarkston.
My mother came to Clarkston with her parents in 1917, and they lived over on Church Street, just where the property now belongs to the church, and they lived on the stream where it dead ended at the road there, ended there, and so they lived in a home that was formerly a lumber yard, and my mother was there. She had gone to Eastern Michigan and graduated from Albion at age 16. Had taught a year out at Stockbridge, Michigan, and then came to Clarkston, or was at Clarkston teaching at probably 1928, 29, I think it was, 28 through 31 or 2.
So she was here for the pandemic of 1918, and she was here for the Depression, although...
And that's how I got to Clarkston, and she met my dad out in Stockbridge, and when she was teaching, she was 18, and he was 18, not quite 18, and she couldn't date him while she was teaching him, but she ended up, they got married in Flint, and they came and settled here.
Good. So Tom, tell us about how your family, I know your wife's family's been here a long time.
Yes, they were settled in Clarkston before the 1900s, but the first of my ancestors, my mother again, as with Rick, came to Clarkston early in 1917 with her father, and her father had been a banker and had been in Detroit and learned that there was an available position at the Clarkston Bank. So he came out to the Clarkston Bank in about 1917 and built a house on Main Street, and that started, he had a daughter, my mother, and another daughter, my aunt, and that started my mother's life in Clarkston, which eventually she went to Michigan State College and met a farm boy, my father.
So there's at least 5 generations on both sides here that have lived in Clarkston.
Right.
So I know that you told me that you had met very early. You had been baptized together at the Clarkston Methodist Church, I assume. Is that the Clarkston Methodist Church? So you lived fairly close to each other as children?
No, Rick lived up in the Middle Lake Road subdivision in a very nice house, and we lived right here on Park Lake in a house that sat near the lake. And we can both remember when Henry Ford built his powerhouse over near where our property was, and put an underground line in to collect water to run his steam engine.
So how old were you in those years?
Well, when Henry Ford was out and around, we were probably 10, 11, 12, 13.
Yeah, 10.
But
Right after the end of the World War II.
I can tell my Henry Ford story, and I know that Rick has some Henry Ford stories whenever you want.
Well, let's talk a little bit about when you first went to school. And the school you went to was
Clarkston.
well, Clarkston, but the Clarkston school was it's.
It was good. It had a wider sweep because we were pulling kids from all over the area. There wasn't at that time a lot of schools, so it was they all came to Clarkston.
And that was the Renaissance High School at that time. It was K-12.
Yeah, and they came from the surrounding areas, from country schools, that one-room country schools.
Like Bailey Lake and like the one out at Andersonville. And
well, I had heard that at some point when you went upstairs, it depended on which way you went, which grade you were.
Yes, very much.
Yeah, the high school was all one school, and we were kind of separated by a hallway from the high school, which we all considered 7th grade on, and we were in the elementary, which was up to 6th. So when you walked down the hall from the 6th to the high school, it was a little hallway, and suddenly you would arrive in a different country.
I actually have your picture, which will be on this film, and I counted the number of students because that was really interesting. There were 39, I believe, in your kindergarten class.
I think there were some that were second graders.
Oh.
Yeah, it was a combined class even then because there were so few of us.
Okay. So, any thoughts about those elementary years?
Well, there was a lot of fun with the kids. We were pretty called the townies because most of us lived within town, and then the others came in later after the 6th grade out in the country schools where there'd be one room school.
So it was almost like Clarkston L, the attendance area for Clarkston L, and then
And we started school just about the time that the Second World War started. So we were always conscious of battles going on, and as a result, as kids, we used to do a lot of what we called play guns, and we'd have homemade guns, and we'd run around and mythically shoot at everybody. It's one of the childhood sports.
Tom, tell your story about how you got in trouble at some point about the Second World War.
Yeah, well, we were in the 1st grade, and the war had started hot and heavy, and the Japanese were the principal adversaries. So I went to the blackboard and drew a picture of a dogfight with airplanes, and with American planes shooting Japanese planes and what have you. And so I went up to the board to explain the picture to the teacher, and I explained as part of the picture that one of the airplanes was manned by her and it just got shot down, or words to that effect. So immediately she drew a circle on the board where I made my beautiful picture, and I had to put my nose in it for the next hour and a half as punishment. So the punishments back then were quite unique, but there were punishments.
Well, just for the audience, there were no televisions at that time, so most everything you were listening to was radio.
All by radio. Okay. But wonderful serials. You could probably think of some.
The Green Hornet, Lone Ranger.
So tell us, Rick, about the being on Park Lake, and I think Tom might have been the culprit of you deciding. I think it probably went from one of your comic books to walk on the bottom of Park Lake.
That was Tom, basically. I was in Cemetery Lake.
Yeah, by then. Well, that was just across the lake, and we decided one day we'd do some diving. So we took just an ordinary tin pail and cut a hole in the top so we could put a plumbing fitting on that would attach to a garden hose. And then to see out of it, we put a flashlight glass and taped it on. And so we'd go into the lake with one hand holding the bucket down on our head, the other hand with a bag of rocks so we could sink, and somebody up on the bank pushing a bicycle tire pump to keep air going into the pail, because the bubble out of the pail and up, but you could breathe. And so that was our venture to check the bottom of the Park Lake. But then, unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess, someone was by the name of Wes Tyndall was painting inside our house that he could see out the window. And so he came running down. What are you kids doing? We said, we're just walking along the bottom of the lake, and he ended that venture in a hurry.
Yes, we kind of want to remember Chuck Robertson, who was also one of the three musketeers in that particular adventure.
Yeah, very definitely. Chuck just died recently, and he was my best friend on Robertson Court and all part of the gang. And all three of us, Robertson, me, and Huttenlocker, all played sports together at Clarkston High. So,
well, tell some of your.
He should be here too.
Yeah, well, he is sort of in spirit, but
Yeah.
so tell some of your. Rick, you have any stories about being in elementary school?
Oh, I just in general the same thing when I with Henry Ford. I've met him when the dam broke, and it was very interesting to see him and be able to talk to him. And he bought me an ice cream cone. And my dad was mayor at the time when the dam broke of Clarkston, and he had him down to our house and like that. So it was very interesting to see. And our house was a gathering point for a lot of kids in town. Would become down in my mother got fixed up we painted the basement, and we had different parties down there and like that. And from the church, the youth fellowship group was a very strong thing in the town, and we used to have a lot of different parties down there for that group. And
they had a great family room, and had a big round table, and his dad, who was a very prosperous insurance agent in the whole area, would sit us all down, and he taught us to play poker. So
not a better place to.
Yeah,
because he was a good poker player too.
He was, and we all learned from him, and it was a good teaching session. Although it might have taken some of our money, I don't know.
He'd try. He wasn't easy on any kid.
Okay. Well, Tom, I know you have a story about Henry Ford and your mother.
Oh, yeah. The Ford story that I have is that he was touring his, there's kind of two stories. He was touring his manufacturing facilities because he had built manufacturing facilities in all the little towns in this area on the theory that when the Japanese invaded the coast, all the manufacturing would be wiped out, and it would be all the Midwest that would be providing war materials. So he built these little factories all around. But he would come to visit his factories, and the factory in downtown Clarkston at the old mill race had a big rotary thing that would turn electric power. No, it was self-powered. So if the power went out, he had power.
And that's right on Washington Street.
Yeah, it's that white building right on Washington, and there was a big window in it. You could see the huge turning mill race turbine, and the problem was that it quit, and they didn't know what to do because Henry would come out and inspect it periodically. So they attached an electric motor to it, so that when Henry came out, it would turn the turbine that was supposed to be turned by the water power. And the other story is he came to check the boiler plant he'd built right by the old school up on Main Street. He was walking up the driveway, and I was coming home from school, and his henchmen, who all had guns on, said, "Son, would you like to shake Henry Ford's hand?" So I said, "Sure." I shook his hand. Then I said, "Mr. Ford, would you like to come home to dinner?" And he said, "No, son, I appreciate the invitation, but I have a dietary problem," which he did have. So I get home, and my mother's cooking dinner. And I say, Mother, I just invited Henry Ford to dinner. And she looked at me like, what in the world? But I said, he can't come. So she was relieved.
But in our schooling at Clarkston, we had a great school. And, we had good athletics, and we had good teachers. And our junior, and senior year, we had good teams. We were the first basketball team to go to the regionals, and get through the regionals, and went up to play Saginaw, St. Mary, and Flint. Or I don't know whether we played Flint or Saginaw. I think we played Saginaw.
I think it was Saginaw, and they went on to win the state.
Yeah.
So, and they only beat us by 2 or 3 points.
So.
Well, and I know that we've just lost your basketball coach, Don Motti, and but the one thing we earlier had said is that almost everybody had to play because it was a small school. So
yeah, every able-bodied male was in every sport. So as a result, you're sitting with a couple of lettermen, multiple letters, because we were in every sport together because that was expected. If you could talk and walk, you were an athlete.
So we have a picture too of the Letterman Club that'll be with this film. One of the things, Rick, that you talked about your dad and his involvement in politics. Can you share some of that?
Well, when I was in high school and like that, my dad was involved in the Republican Party in Michigan and head of the Oakland County Republican Party. And, I can remember sitting in my family room and with Ferguson, the congressman from the area, and can't think of his name now. The Senator
Vandenberg
was sitting there. Our sandhill cranes were going by. But listening to them talk politics in our family room was something to be, as a kid, 15, 16 years old, 14.
Some of that was, I think we talked about the Eisenhower, Nixon.
My dad was in the room when Eisenhower picked Nixon to be his running mate. And my dad was one of the top people for Vandenberg, and then they switched to Eisenhower. There were ballots at the primary, and so it was interesting to be there to hear that, to be able to talk to Senator Vandenberg and listen to him. And, my dad and Senator Vandenberg got Jerry Ford to run for Congress at the time. So there was a lot of politics my dad had. And, during the war, he was the rationing guy for gasoline. And so he was a year older than they didn't take them to draft him into the Army. So he had the different jobs there.
Well, that was an exciting, 1952 was really kind of an exciting year because Eisenhower had been the general of the Army in Europe and came back, and so was quite the hero of
everybody.
The war, yeah. And so that's really interesting.
That reminds me, too, that not only did Rick and I go through high school together, but we both went to Michigan, and we both got into the business school, so we continued all the way through undergrad and business school, and Hutt went on to get his master's degree at the business school. So we go through all the way.
But then you went and got your law degree at...
Yeah, I did that at night. I had a slight interruption of a few years, got married and raised a family, then went back to school nights and got a law degree at Wayne State. So I finally finished it all up.
Congratulations to both of you. So.
And our education in Clarkston was good. I mean, to go from a little town to one of the greatest universities in the world is quite an honor to be able to do.
And you were graduates of the class of?
53.
53, okay.
Here. Graduated from Michigan.
And there were approximately, did you say?
59 or 60, it was, I guess.
I'm sorry, what?
59 or
How many,
60.
57 we graduated undergrad. You graduated later because you had a master's.
Yeah.
But there were approximately 200 kids in your class at the time. Is that?
No.
Oh.
At Michigan? No.
No, I mean at Clarkston High School.
No, 60.
Oh, 60 in your class.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And 70% of them went to college.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we had a great class. We took the classic reunion at Washington D.C. Got on a train, rode all night on the train, then took buses around Washington D.C. So we did everything you were supposed to do in high school.
Yeah.
So so other than doing a lot of drawing of pictures there and about the war, how did the war? And I know the war affected you with the ration stamps. Any other things that?
I think just the sadness of every time you turn around, somebody's dad would be killed.
Yeah, they had a big board in downtown Clarkston that they had all the names of people who had enlisted, and then they put a big star by the name if they were killed.
Yeah,
that was really sad.
We had people in our classes where they'd have their people where their fathers would be dying. It was very bad.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's a lot of, we have a lot of new people today. I think that's probably, when you were youngsters, there was probably somewhere around 8,000 people maybe in the community. That would be Independence Township.
Yeah, it was a small area. We were in this little village, and then all the outlying land was generally farms. So active farms. So there was a lot of agriculture going on, and the downtown Clarkston area was just a little commercial area with a couple of grocery stores that we both remember because they're when there's only 2 grocery stores in town, you remember everything.
And then one burned, and another burned.
And Rick knows there was a grocer by the name of Rudy Swartz, and there's always been a Rudy's in downtown Clarkston, and he's got stories, but I've got one too. I went down Sunday morning. He was open at 7 o'clock in the morning. And I said, Rudy, why are you here at 7 o'clock? He says, Tom, as long as there's a dime laying on Main Street in downtown Clarkston, I'm here to get it.
There used to be some parties in the back of that.
Oh, yeah. Rudy had a little drinking habit and had a bottle in the back room.
One bottle, not a bottle. But it was very interesting. And then the Alger Hardware was there. And
that was Alger Hardware. That's where Harrison's
is now.
Yes.
Yeah, and
where Harrison
on the end of the street there with the end of the street, same side as Rudy's.
No.
It was on the other side of the street.
Yes.
Where I think it's.
You're thinking Gardner's Hardware.
Gardner. Okay.
Yeah, Gardner's preceded Alger's, but Alger's had everything. I can still envision every tittle and whatever of the inside of that store, but the great story is Robertson, who should be sitting here, it's not this morning. He was in there so many times himself because he loved guns, and there was a gun in there he particularly liked. He said, go ahead and look at it, just stare at it. And finally, Alger came up to him and said, what are you doing? And he said, I'm just looking at that gun. He says, you've been doing that for 2 or 3 days. You just better leave. So he was afraid he was going to take it or some darn thing.
But the hardware stores of those days had, the 40s and 50s had everything.
Oh, yeah. Everything, yeah.
And Gardner's, I remember when they finally closed it, they had trucks in getting stuff out of there.
Oh.
I mean, it was so
Basement
full of junk.
Full. Yeah.
And, the post office moved up to where the town, that was the township hall, was a little white building there.
Okay, that's sort of where, next to the Fed now, but the Fed owns it, yeah.
And, but all those things were part of the town. Our Halloweens were something else in this town then.
So tell what would Halloween be like for you?
Well, it was, we were kind of active at the night. Usually we had a plow that they pulled around to scrape roads and like that. That usually end up on the flagpole on that uh, building, and then we would also we tend to get up top of buildings with tomatoes.
Yeah, now that's the Huttenlocker side of the story. But on the other end of town, on my side, one of our targets was always an outhouse out on Holcomb Street. So we would remove the outhouse and carry it downtown and put it right under the stoplight. So there was an outhouse sitting under the stoplight on Halloween. And one night, one of the transporters slipped and fell into the outhouse hole.
Oops.
I can tell you his name, but maybe, and he's deceased, but maybe he wouldn't want to have it heard. But he fell in, and he went home and took a shower, got cleaned up, and came back.
Yeah. That's some of the wild stories.
Well, there's always been a 4th of July parade, is that correct?
Right.
And
Yeah.
the fire department did it for many years, I think. And
We've been in it.
Yeah, riding bicycles or whatever.
And plus, even since then, we had a pontoon boat, and we used to put people on it and bring it down through. We had all kinds of things.
very community parade.
Yeah, yeah, it's sad to see that go.
Well,
Well, it isn't gone, but it's closed for the year, shall
Yeah.
we say.
Yeah, right. It's not like it used to be. All the kids would be on bicycles, all festooned. So, that was a big part of the parade, all the bicycle
I've
riders.
always gone to the Memorial Day parades, and I still do. And the cemetery is there, and I walked the cemetery and read a lot of the stones and like that. There's a lot of them, and they're
Yeah.
great memories of people.
So looking forward, I know that Rick, you're making a move, and Tom, you're still going to be here, I assume.
Yeah, I've got a lot of family in the area, so there's no way I'm going to leave grandchildren and great-grandchildren behind.
But what do you want people to know about the community? I mean, you've spent your entire lives here. Your parents, generations of people have been there. Have been here. Anything you'd like to share with the next generation?
Well, all I can say is that downtown Clarkston is still as quaint as it always was, and friendly, and so just keep it friendly and quaint.
I think that generally I would say that this has been a caring community. I know our church means a lot to me, a tremendous amount. It's built on my grandparents' property. They've done a tremendous, and that's become a sort of a center of the community in a lot of ways. And I still would want to support that and make sure that they have the caring going on that they've always had, and that people would care for others. That's what I would like to see. There's a lot of things out there you can do. I given some kids scholarships at Michigan, and there's nothing finer than to be able to go and talk to those kids while they're there, and to see them grow up and hear from them. It's such a great community to be from.
Well, I'd add that the Huttenlockers have been great benefactors to the Methodist Church in Clarkston, donating the land to build the church on, donating a lot of money to build the church, and being very active in it since. So if there's anybody that's got an inside track to wherever we're going, he's got it.
Yes. Well, I know that it was your mother, actually, that gave the land to the
My mother and my dad and I,
Okay.
and my brother.
Gave the land to the church, and we're as a member of that church, I'm very thankful.
Yeah.
But what a legacy to have, and both of you have a great legacy to this community, because I I know, Tom, that you were a township trustee for a while.
Yes, I was.
And the Hutton Locker Insurance Agent has always been a benefactor to people in this community. So thank you, Rick, for that. And we thank you for your memories, great stories, and what a childhood growing up here in the 1940s and 50s in Clarkston. And stay tuned for the next Clarkston Memories.